So I've had a theory that religious people are more likely to be hypocritical. And that is a good thing. Being a hypocrite is a good thing. Why? Why are religious people more likely to be hypocritical? Because what does it mean to be a hypocrite? What's the definition of a hypocrite? A hypocrite is somebody who
Says one thing and does another.
says one thing and does another, does not live up to their standards, to their beliefs. So you think something is the right thing, you say it's the right thing, but you don't necessarily do it. That's a hypocrite. And so therefore, I would say the religious people are more likely to be hypocrites because who, more than religious people, have high standards not to live up to. If you believe in a religion, if you believe in a set of belief system, then you've got a certain standard that you believe in. You may or may not live up to that, and most likely not, because if a religion has any worth, it's going to give you standards that are high, that are to strive for, not things that are easy. And so, almost by definition, a religious person is going to be a hypocrite because there's going to be certain beliefs, things that you say that you believe in, that you believe are right, that you should be doing, but you don't do them because you're a human being and you're fallible. The ideals are up here, but you are down here, almost by definition. And so, a religious person is much more likely, if not inevitably, going to be a hypocrite. Whereas somebody who's not religious, doesn't have a religious belief, does not subscribe to any particular faith or creed or set of values and rules, well, they're unlikely to be a hypocrite because they would probably do what they believe in, or they'll believe in what they do. They'll set a standard that fits to what they do. And so whatever I do is right because, well, that's my standard. That's what I believe is right. If there's no higher standard, if there's no absolute standard, a higher one that comes from a higher source, so where do standards come from? From myself, from what I feel is right. So I'll do what I feel is right, or maybe the other way around. What I do, I will feel is right because I don't have a higher standard. So religious hypocrisy is almost expected, therefore, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to have a standard that's higher than where you are, an absolute standard, as opposed to making up what is right and wrong based on what I feel like, saying there's a standard of right and wrong. I don't live up to it. I'm not always there. I'm not a perfect being, but there is a standard to live up to. That is where a religious person finds themselves, and therefore it shouldn't be surprising that religious people are hypocritical. And it's not bad. It's good. It's good to be a hypocrite. Next time someone calls you a hypocrite, you can thank them. Although we've learned that we're not supposed to be affected by insults or praise. That's what the Kabbalists have taught us, that we're supposed to have this level of ishtavut, of equanimity, where it doesn't matter somebody praises me or they curse me out, it's all the same. They help me out or they get in my way, it's all the same. Somebody's an assistant to me, helps me out, encourages me, or they get in my way and try and bring me down, it's all the same. That's where we're supposed to be. We learned that somebody who with faith, if you really believe that everything comes from God, so then nothing that happens is by accident, nothing is not supposed to happen, it's all supposed to happen. And if it happens, that's the proof that it's meant to happen. And if it happens, that's the proof that God wanted to happen. And if it's good for God, it should be good for me. Even if it's hurtful, harmful, annoying, painful, tragic, okay, we don't see why it's good, but it's ultimately good because it all comes from God. And therefore we saw that a person who has true faith will not be shaken by whatever happens. We'll see it as this is the divine will, this is how it's meant to be, this is what's supposed to happen. Here again, it seems like what we're looking at is an example of an ideal that seems very lofty, seems quite beyond reach for the average person. Can the average person really say that we can go through life and experiencing whatever goes on, those who harm me and those who help me, and it's all the same because it comes from God? Can we truly be in a state of equanimity, emotionally balanced and accepting of no matter what happens? It seems like a very uh, be, beyond reach type of level. Maybe there were some very holy people who were like that, who did reach it. But the average person, is this something that we can reach? And if not, so then why do we have these ideals that are beyond our reach? And this is not the only one, but it seems that there are many. As we study and we learn the writings of the holy people, the great leaders, the mystics, they give us these ideas, these thoughts, these ways of thinking that seem to be beyond what the average person can handle. A few more examples of them would be that on the one hand, if we indeed have faith, we believe that everything is in God's hands, that means my success or failure in any pursuit that I'm involved in is actually not in my hands, it's in God's hands. If I will be successful in business or my business will fail, that's up to God. If I'll be successful in my relationships or not, that's up to God. If I will be a lonely person or a person who has connections, that's all up to God. Everything is ultimately up to God. God decides what happens. This is faith. But there seems to be a contradictory statement to that because, on the other hand, we are expected to work for a living, to seek out love and relationships, to put effort into our relationships. And if we don't, we're held responsible. So again, there's this very lofty ideal of where we're supposed to be in our faith, that it's all up to God. But I'm not supposed to then do nothing and wait for God to do it. I'm supposed to go out and do what I need to do to make a living or to find my soulmate or to improve my relationships. I need to work on that. All the while, I'm believing that it's up to God if I'm successful or not. It's not my thing, which seems like a very high ideal and then a sort of a contradictory statement that goes completely against it. And here as well, when it says that we're supposed to have this hishtavut, this equanimity, that nothing bothers us, that's a very high ideal. But then on the other hand, there are times to cry, times to laugh. We have emotions, and emotions react and respond to our experiences, and those emotions are encouraged. There are laws of mourning, for example, if God forbid somebody passes away. So the Torah says one must sit Shiva, 7 days of mourning where you dwell on the loss, 30 days of extended mourning, then a full 12 months of mourning. There is an idea of experiencing the loss, crying, feeling the pain. If I'm supposed to be equanimous and equal to everything and all's the same and all is in God's hands, what am I crying about? This is what God wants, and it must be good. So there's this very high ideal of seeing it as all good, but then on the other hand, there's the crying. In fact, the Talmud says that a person is supposed to bless God for bad tidings, just as you bless God for good tidings. When you hear good news, you're supposed to be thankful to God, make a blessing. When you hear bad news, you're also supposed to make a blessing. And it says, just like you bless God for good news, so too you should bless God for bad news in the same way. And the Talmud says, what does that mean? To accept with joy. So if you're told that you just won the lottery, $10 billion, Powerball $10 million lottery, you just won. you should bless God. You should be thankful to God, give a blessing to God. If you just lost $10 million, your ship sunk, your business collapsed, you hear terrible news, bless God. And says the Talmud with joy. Then the Talmud continues, what's the blessing? What's the wording of that blessing? And it says, for good news, you say, blessed are you, our God, who is good and does good. And for bad news, you say, blessed are you, God, the true judge. You're the judge of truth. You decide what's supposed to happen. So in the same breath, the Talmud says you're supposed to bless God for good and for bad, accept it with joy. And then it says, and there's two different blessings for these two, thanking God for being good when there's good, and acknowledging God as the true judge when things are not so good. So the Talmud itself recognizes the two different blessings, the two different expressions, and yet it starts off by saying as if it's the same. You should see it as the same. So here again we see this seeming contradiction where there's these high ideals, but then there's the reality. There's like what we're supposed to be, and then the actual facts on the ground of where we are. We're supposed to accept everything with joy, good and bad. And in reality, there's two different blessings. There's a blessing for good and a blessing for not good. We recognize it comes from God, but it's not the same blessing. We're supposed to understand that God does everything and He's in charge of everything, and our success is in His hands. But I've got to work. I've got to put in the effort. And we're supposed to feel this equanimity no matter what happens. But at the same time, we have real feelings. We have feelings of joy and feelings of sadness. So if the Kabbalists are being relevant to us, if their teachings are speaking to us here and now, we who are not on this necessarily lofty level, otherworldly level, so then we must be able to apply it to our reality. But it seems they're giving us this ideal that's a bit too high. So I think that this is a topic that is very often misunderstood. That sometimes we do study these ideas and we feel left out. We feel that, okay, this is not for me. This is not realistic. Um, Maybe there are some tzaddikim, righteous individuals who can live on this plane. I'm not one of them. I'm just the average Joe, and this is just not for me. I think that's a misunderstanding because every single teaching that the Kabbalists shared, they shared it for us. They shared it to help us. They shared it as a something that is personal that we can apply. They're not just talking to themselves, they're talking to us. But it has to be understood fully and properly and more carefully. And so to do this, to understand it a bit deeper, I think this touches at a central teaching that the Kabbalists tried to portray and get across throughout the writings, the Kabbalistic writings and the Hasidic writings, a concept of this certain duality within our reality, between ideal and the here and now, how things are supposed to be and the way things are. And the Kabbalists taught that it's in the tension between ideal and reality that our life resides. This is where our spiritual life is, in that exact tension between how things are supposed to be and how things really are. And our work, our spiritual work, is to not deny one or the other, to not choose one over the other, but to live in the uh, tension, the conflict between ideal and reality. Not to pretend we're living in an ideal world and deny reality, or not to deny the ideals and just accept reality for what it is, but to live in the tension between the two of ideal and reality. It's a harder existence because of it, there's a lot of tension there. It's precarious, it takes work, but it's the most rewarding and the most true existence to be in that space between. Let me explain a little bit. There's a fascinating talk that the Rebbe gave. The Lubavitch Rebbe gave this talk just after his wife passed away. So his life partner, his wife, had passed away in 1988, and he was visibly broken by it. He was a holy man, a, a Kabbalist, a spiritual leader, a man of absolute faith who went through a personal loss, and he was visibly emotionally broken from it. At the same time, he showed extreme, amazing strength and expressed some of his deepest teachings at this time. And one of his teachings, it dealt with this very topic of the way things are in their ideal and the way things are in the reality and the tension between the two, which it almost seemed like this was what he was experiencing at a time when he had absolute faith that everything is good, and yet he was going through something painful. And he taught an amazing lesson at that time. He pointed out that if you look in the Torah, the story of the Jewish people, which is the story of the exodus from Egypt and traveling through the desert to the Promised Land, was led by Moses. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses was the leader who led us through the desert. But he didn't lead us alone. Most of the time when Moses is mentioned, he's mentioned along with his brother Aaron. That Moses was the leader, but Aaron, who was the high priest, he is mentioned side by side with Moses as taking the people out of Egypt, leading the people through the desert. Moses and Aaron were like these partners. And so the Rebbe pointed that out and questioned, why is it that we always need to hear about Aaron as well as Moses? Moses was the one who received the Torah, who went up the mountain, uh, and he's the one who spoke face to face with God. And yet, every move he made, it seemed to be with Aaron, his brother, assisting him by his side. And so the Rebbe pointed out that these two characters were very different, Moses and Aaron. That Moses represented absolute truth. He was the man who went up the mountain, spoke to God face to face. He was like an otherworldly being who came down to this world to teach absolute truth. Aaron, his brother, was different. Aaron represented kindness. Kindness means being connected to people, being able to relate to people. A person who was very much amongst the people, for the people. Moses was the guy on the mountain. Aaron was the guy on the ground. And this is reflected in many parts of their life. Uh, for example, it says that when Moses passed away, the people mourned, but when Aaron passed away, everyone mourned his passing because he related to everybody. Moses was like that big figure on the mountain, whereas Aaron was someone that everybody knew personally. They felt connected to him emotionally. Moses was the inspirational leader, but Aaron was the friend, the one who connected to the people. And so Moses represents absolute truth. Aaron represents kindness and connection. And you needed both. In the leadership of the Jewish people, you needed both. Moses on his own was a bit too aloof. You needed Aaron to connect with the people. But Aaron on his own was a bit too amongst the people. You needed Moses to draw the people upwards, to give them the vision. They were a team that worked together. And only with the two of them could the Jewish people be led properly. The way the Rebbe described it is that Moses was like the brain, and Aaron was like the heart. There's a very fundamental difference between mind and heart. And it's fascinating how just like Moses and Aaron were the leaders of the people, so too in our persona, we have these two leading faculties in our being, our mind and our heart. The mind is the seat of intellect, of rational thinking. of clarity. The heart is the seat of emotion, of feeling, of connecting. The mind has the ability to be completely objective and to see truth for what it is. The heart has the nature of being subjective, of being connected and involved with what we do. The easiest way to illustrate it is thinking of two different people. Even though every person has mind and heart, we all have intellect and emotion, and they are our two main drivers. But certain people we would describe as being intellectual types, and certain people we describe as being emotional types. If you think about yourselves or your loved ones or people close to you or the people who you deal with, so you can probably identify uh, somebody in your circle who would be an extreme intellectual and somebody who would be an extreme emotional type. What's the difference between them? Well, very much. There's a huge difference. The intellectual person is very thought out, cool, calm, a little bit aloof and removed, analytical of what's going on, not all that excitable, quite dispassionate, able to see a situation for what it is with great clarity. And that is their strength. Because they're intellectual, they're more removed. Because they're more removed, they're objective and they can see things for what they are. So they can describe a situation well, they can analyze and judge a situation very well because they're not clouded by emotion, they're removed with intellect. That's our intellectual type. If we go to our emotional type, very different. The exact opposite. An emotional person is very involved with whatever they're doing, not removed, not dispassionate, involved. They get entangled in the situation, in the people around them. They connect, therefore, with the people around them. There is feeling, there's camaraderie, there's commiseration and empathy because they're involved with the people around them. They're going to be much more dynamic and in a way fickle because emotions go up and down. There's a lot more action and energy in emotions. It's not cold and dispassionate like intellect. It's involved and passionate. And so therefore they get entangled with a situation. They feel along with everything. They're moved by whatever you say. They move this way, then they can be moved that way. There's much more movement in emotion, whereas intellect is still and calm. And so if you want a clear judgment on something, you've got to go to the intellectual person. If you want commiseration and empathy, you've got to go to the emotional person. The world of feelings is where you can share and be with somebody. The world of intellect is removed and disconnected. Each has its advantage and disadvantage. Of course, somebody who's extremely emotional is going to get in trouble to a certain extent because they're going to be all over the place. They're going to be pulled in every direction by whatever's happening. And they can't disentangle for themselves from it. An extremely intellectual person is the opposite. They can't get involved in anything. There's no relationship, there's no connection. They're an observer to everything. They're cold and dispassionate to everything. They each have a weakness and they each have a strength when you're extremely that or that. And most of us are both. We may tend a bit more to this or to that, a little bit more intellectual type or a little bit more emotional type, but we've got both. We've all got both intellect and emotion. We have our power to be dispassionate, removed, and see things for how they are. And we have our power of emotion to connect to things, but thereby, by connecting, we lose the dispassionate, objective view of things, and we start to look at things subjectively with ourselves in it. In Kabbalistic terms, These two faculties are called Chachma and Bina. Chachma is usually translated as wisdom, Bina as understanding. But in the Zohar, it says Chachma Moicha. Chachma is the mind. Bina Liba. Bina is the heart. That the these two faculties are two faculties of experience. I can experience something from the level of Chachma, or I can experience it from the level of Bina. When I experience it from Chachma, I'm experiencing it for what it is. When I experience Bina, I'm experiencing myself, my connection with it, my feelings towards it. And there's a shift. When you go from Chachma to Bina, you go from objective reality to subjective reality. Things the way they are to things the way I see it. And that process is happening constantly. As we're sitting here and having this conversation, so our Chachma and Bina are working constantly. We hear words, we hear ideas. The initial experience of an idea, like as I'm talking, the initial experience is a Chachma experience. The words, as I'm saying it, for what they are landing in your brain. And you're hearing them for what they are. But very quickly after that, your Bina starts to work. And what I'm saying, you start to interpret in your words, apply it to how you feel, fit it into a preconceived idea or a previous experience, and form an opinion of it. Do I agree with this or not agree? Does this sit with me or doesn't sit with me? Do I like this or I don't like this? Does this fit in with what I think or not? That almost inevitably it happens. You go from the Chachma to the Bina, from the intellectual experience of objective reality to the emotional experience of subjective. What do I think of this? It's almost inseparable. The way the Zohar puts it is that Chachma and Bina are two lovers that never part. As soon as you have a Chachma, the Bina comes in. This is good and also not good. It's necessary and it's also risky. The ability to have Chachma is the ability to hear an idea for what it is, to hear truth, to ascertain truth as it is, without diluting it or without making it limited to my way of thinking. It is what it is. That's the Chachma experience. The Bina experience is now I need to take this idea in. I need to start to assimilate it into my mind, to apply it to myself, to digest it. If I don't do that, it remains an idea, a truth, but a removed truth, something that's out of my realm. I need to take it in with Bina. So Chachma by itself is this truth, but it's removed from me, like an intellectual experience. It's an idea. I need Bina to make it something that's real, that's something that's personal, something I can take in. So it applies to me. I can take it with me. But the risk of Bina is that as soon as Bina comes in, you've lost the original truth. It starts to become your idea, the way you see it, in your subjective view. You've lost the original. So we spoke before about an intellectual type or an emotional type. Within our intellect, within the way we take in information, there's the chachma and the bina of it. The chachma of it is our ability to hear an idea in its purity, in its essence, as it is. Bina is our idea to take that idea and apply it to ourselves, put it in our own words, take it in, react and respond to it, interact with the idea. We need, in order to reach truth, in order to know that you're getting it right, in order to learn something new, you need to be able to slow down the Chachma Bina switch. You need to be able to hear things for what they are before you judge, before you jump to conclusions, before you decide if you like it or not. Did you actually understand it in the first place? You know those people who you can't tell them a joke. As soon as you start a joke, I know that one. As soon as you tell them a story, I've heard that. You can't learn anything new. What if this joke was a similar to what you heard, but it's different? Maybe it has the same start, but it goes differently. Or maybe the way I say it is different. Or maybe you'll learn something new by the way I tell this story that you didn't hear a detail before. But no, I heard it already. So that is going to be no, leave it at Chachma for a minute. Just hear it for what it is. So too, when sometimes we jump to conclusions about something very quickly, you're hearing an idea or a concept like what we're talking about now, or any concept, and very quickly you decide, is this for me or not? Do I agree with this or I don't agree with this? You didn't hear it yet. You don't know what to agree or not to agree with. Put yourself aside for a moment and just hear it. Learn something new before you make any judgment. Just let it land. Let the idea land and see what happens. That's the skill of holding back your bina and allowing chachma to take root. Experience chachma for what it is. Don't judge. Just we'll judge later. We'll get into that later. We'll decide later if we like it or we don't like it. But for now, just hear it. Just listen to it for what it is, for how it is. Some people have that skill naturally to hear a new idea, to listen to it, and to hold back their judgment. Others naturally jump to conclusions and find it hard to hear something for what it is. And so it's a muscle to exercise to slow down the process from Chachma to Bina. But to never get to Bina means to leave an idea for what it is and never really understand it, never really allow it to become yours, never make it a part of your mindset, your world, to never bring it into your heart, to never experience it. It remains an idea. So Chachma without Bina means listening to a class, a lecture, and it remains as like flashes of insight that don't apply to me, that aren't mine. And the proof of it is I can't put it into my own words. It happens sometimes that you sit in a class like this for an hour and you walk out and someone says, "How was it?" It was great. What was it about? I don't know. It does happen. So what was so great about it? And why'd you sit there for an hour like nodding your head and you don't even know what it was about? No, it's not that you weren't listening. You were. It's not that you're pretending. No, it really was interesting. Just it was a chachma experience without the bina. That the ideas were boom, 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 hitting, but I didn't have time maybe to assimilate the ideas into my own mind, or I didn't try to, or whatever. So it became chachma without bina.
Is the dart the objective application of that?
Yeah. So dart is a third category of this dart actually has different functions. One of the functions of dart is to marry chachma and bina, to make sure the bina stays true to the chachma and that the chachma enters into bina. So in this paradigm, there are a lot of different paradigms of chachma, bina, dart, but in this one, chachma is the idea as it is, intellectually and objectively. Bina is starting to feel it subjectively, and dart is to make sure that your subjective feeling of the idea is true to the original chachma that the idea was. So you have to switch a little back to Chachma, going back, referencing back to Chachma to make sure that the bina is actually, did I understand it correctly? And making sure the chachma doesn't stay in chachma but coming into bina. That's the function of da'at, because da'at means connection. It's one of the translations of da'at. So connecting chachma and bina. So the fact that we are created in such a way that our mind and our heart are the two centers of our gravity, the centers of our being. The mind is our ability to take in that which is outside of us, that which is beyond us, to perceive of a concept, of an idea that is not mine. It's from a higher or different or external source. That's where my mind. My heart is my processing of and experiencing internally, how it affects me. How do I feel about it? How do I interact with it and relate to it? That's me. And each has a power. The power of Chachma is it sees truth for what it is, undiluted. The power of Bina is it experiences it personally. It's my experience. I've got it. It's affecting me. It's down here. It's not just up there. The intellectual's power is that they can see truth for what it is. The emotional person's power is that they experience truth, but not for what it is. It's their experience, but it's experienced. There's a there is a compromise that Bina makes. For something to be an experience that I experience, it has to be diluted. I can't experience something outside of myself, inside myself. I have to take that experience, package it so it fits in me, that fits my paradigm, fits my experience. It can't be purely true to the original. As soon as you move from Chachma to Bina, there is a watering down, a limitation, a finiteness. Chachma takes the idea for what it is. Bina is my interpretation of it. So it's not the original anymore. But I'm involved now. It's become real. It's become entrenched in me. I've brought it down into my heart. So the Rebbe says that this structure of mind and heart was the structure of Moses and Aaron and their leadership. Moses was the mind and Aaron was the heart. That's why our sages say that Moses was truth and Aaron was kindness. What's the difference between truth and kindness? Truth is an absolute. Truth is unchanging. Truth is what it is. Kindness is tailored to the situation. Kindness is taking into consideration what a person needs, what's appropriate. Truth is not. Truth doesn't take any consideration. Truth is truth. If you ask me, do you like this new outfit that I bought? Or do you like my haircut? Or do you like my new glasses? Do you want truth or you want kindness? They could be different. The truth might be quite harsh. Kindness is, if you like it, then I like it too.
You have to be careful if you want.
You said it, not me.
Got it.
Okay, so there's truth, which like it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter how you feel. Doesn't matter if this is pleasant or not. This is truth. This is a fact. This is a reality. It's an unchanging reality. And then there's kindness, which it does matter what you feel. I'll be kind to you in the way that you need, which may not be truth. And these are two important ideals. There's a place for truth and there's a place for kindness. if you only have kindness with no truth, it could go anywhere. You could be kind to the cruel. You can give where it's not needed, where it's inappropriate. Kindness can go completely astray. You need truth. But if you only have truth without kindness, so then there's no wiggle room, there's no leeway, there's no room for faults and mistakes and imperfection. It's just like this is how it's got to be. And so in the leadership of the Jewish people, there was Moses and there was Aaron. Moses representing truth and Aaron representing kindness. And there needed to be both. The higher vision and the reality. Fascinatingly, the very middle point of the Torah, our sages identified the very middle point of the entire Torah. There are about 80,000 words in the Torah. There's a point smack in the middle, and in the Chumash that we have in Shul, it always says where it is. This is the middle point of the Torah. Where's the middle point of the Torah? It's in the book of Leviticus, in the parasha called Shmini, where it says this is the middle point of the Torah, and what it's dealing with is an argument between Moses and Aaron. It's a very obtuse topic, but to try and just simplify it, it was on the first day of the inauguration of the tabernacle, the Mishkan in the desert, the miniature temple. Aaron was the priest. There were certain sacrifices that were brought. And on that day, Aaron lost two children. Two of his sons died. He was in a state of mourning, but they hadn't even been buried yet. And therefore, he did not consume one of the sacrifices that was brought on that day because he was in a state of mourning. Moses questioned him, why didn't you eat from the sacrifice? Even though you're in a state of mourning, but you're the high priest. And so you're supposed to eat from the sacrifice. And so Moses was annoyed at Aaron, why aren't you eating the sacrifice? And Aaron said that this sacrifice it shouldn't be eaten in my circumstance of mourning. There are some sacrifices that were special for that day. They could be eaten even if you're in a state of mourning. But this particular sacrifice was a normal sacrifice that would happen on a regular basis. This sacrifice shouldn't be eaten by a person who's mourning. A very complicated debate they had, where Moses felt that he should be eating the sacrifice even though he's mourning. And Aaron said, no, in my circumstances, I shouldn't be eating it. And he gave an argument why. And the conclusion was that Moses said, you're right. That he said, you're correct. And he was not embarrassed to say, I was wrong, you're correct. And he went and told everyone, we had an argument, we had a debate. Aaron was correct, I was wrong. And that is the middle point of the Torah. It's such a strange conversation. And for our sages to point out this is the middle, the center, the very heart of the Torah is fascinating. Because if we look at this idea of Moses and Aaron being the mind and the heart, being the Chachma and the Bina, being truth and kindness, the tension between those two things is the heart of the Torah. Is the center point of the whole Torah. What they were arguing about was exactly this point. Moses was saying, you have gone through a tragedy in your life, but today is the inauguration of the tabernacle. There are offerings that need to be brought, and they should be consumed and eaten. Why didn't you do it? That's what you should have done. You should have eaten the sacrifices, even though you're in mourning. What was he essentially saying? He was saying that it doesn't really matter what a person's going through. There's the truth of what you're supposed to do. Your job is to be the high priest and to eat the sacrifices. The fact that you're going through mourning, that shouldn't change the reality. The truth is that you should be eating. You should be doing your work. What Moses was presenting was, in a way, the teaching of hishtavut, of equanimity. That yes, you're going through a moment of tragedy, but that's the external. On the inner truth, the real truth is this is what God wants. This is what's supposed to happen. So why would that alter your way of serving God? You should do your work in the tabernacle as normal. That was Moses's argument. The argument that came from a point of view of truth. Truth doesn't change. Truth doesn't change according to the circumstances. It's not fickle. It's not dependent on your mood, on what you're going through. It's just a reality. Truth is truth. That was Moses' view. That was from the view of the mind that sees things just for what they are, in an objective way, removed, dispassionate way. That was Moses' argument. Aaron argued back and said, no. There is an objective truth, and then there's a subjective reality. I'm going through tragedy right now. So my reality is to be in that state of mourning. I can't just do the regular things in the temple when I'm in a state of mourning. There is ideal truth in theory, and then there's the reality on the ground and the experiential reality. I have to go through the experiential reality. I have to experience this moment of mourning. And that changes things. When I'm in mourning, I'm not in celebration. It's a different experience. My heart is now in a state of pain, not in a state of celebration. I have to go through this and that. There's a time for this and a time for that. Aaron was being in touch with the reality on the ground, with the emotional state that he was in, and saying, I have to reckon with that and deal with that and live appropriately. And that changes the way I serve God at this moment. That's from the point of view of the heart. So this was a moment of tension. The brothers who were the leaders of the Jewish people, who got on very well.
Was Moses' nephews also, surely he would have felt some empathy towards him.
Correct, it's his family.
To ask that question.
Yeah. So we're not, God forbid, saying that Moses felt no empathy or didn't care. But he was saying, yes, that's what you're going through, but it shouldn't change your service of God. He was saying that we should have this equanimity where whatever happens, it's all the same. And he's right on a Moses's level where he's talking. It's true. It's true what he's saying. Everything comes from God, good and bad. So why should it change anything? If it's good or bad, that's just the external experience of something. As we saw last time, that there's good, which is God giving us, and then there's bad, which is God giving us even more. It's just too much for us to experience. It's too much for our vessels, our containers to be able to experience. So it's beyond us. But it's all God. So why should there be any difference? You should serve him exactly the same. Meaning, if you have to mourn, you have to mourn. But how do you mourn? You mourn the same way as you do any other mitzvah. This is what you've got to do. And it shouldn't change your service of God.
But Moses could divorce himself from relationships because, like with his wife, I think I'm correct. Once he took on leadership of the Jewish people, he didn't bother to live with her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he could remove himself from human interaction.
Right.
It's
Which,
not what we want to aspire to.
right. So,
I think.
correct. So we don't do that. We don't do that, but Moses did. He's the one who went up on the mountain. So, but without him doing that, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing.
So that's the ideal. Well, it's not the ideal.
No, it's not that this is an ideal to live up to. This is a
The tension between the two.
yes. So there's a world of Moses, which is this otherworldly type of living. And if there wasn't for Moses, then we wouldn't be able to survive down here. We wouldn't be able to have a meaningful life down here. We need Moses to bring down that truth. But we can't stay there. We have to be down here. In this debate between Moses and Aaron, who won the debate?
Aaron.
Aaron won. He won the debate. Moses admitted to him. But what gave the stamp of approval to Aaron's position? Moses. It was because Moshe said, "You're right," that he's right.
Is there a connection between equanimity and Chokhmah and Binah? Like, if two different subjects, equanimity, and then there is
So
opposing faculties.
Chachma, the level of Chachma is equanimity. When you're on the level of Chachma, whatever happens is the same. Because you're not in the picture.
So
Moses, who's on that level,
the level of Chokhmah.
it's a higher level, but Aaron won the debate.
Reality.
Because the point of that higher level is to feed the lower level, to inspire and feed the lower level. Meaning, what Aaron was arguing back to Moses is that Moses, you're the lawgiver. You brought the Torah down to us. Only you could spend 40 days and 40 nights on the mountain. But the point of the giving of the Torah, the point of that revelation was for us down here to bring that sanctity and holiness down into our lives, to apply it to the everyday.
So we are not, most of us are not at the level. Interestingly, 2 weeks ago, when you were talking about equanimity, I had an event of synchronicity. I'm reading or struggling with some commentary for the guide for Perplex by Rambam.
Mm-hmm.
And I opened a page and I read the commentary was on the topic that a great leader has to be in a state of equanimity. So if we look at Moses, and I was thinking about another man who I consider to be a great leader, but I won't mention his name not to raise a political debate. So probably the leaders have to be, great leaders have to be in a state of equanimity. We mere mortals, what is our
Well, Moses to be able to achieve what he did had to give up a lot. You have to give up living a normal life. It's pointed out that Moses' children didn't really go in his way. They were not leaders after him. His student Joshua became the leader after him, but his children didn't. We don't hear much from his children. So one of the great commentaries, the Chassam Sofer, says that this was a price that Moses paid. That he lived a very aloof existence. So he was separated from his wife. He wasn't with his kids. He was up on the mountain. And that was a huge sacrifice that he made, which is not the normal. That's not the normal life. We can't live a Moses life. He only did it for us to be able to live a normal life, inspired and infused with the holiness that Moses brought down. And so his world is not the ideal for us to follow. We can't live on that level. But we're also told that there's a bit of Moses in us as well. That there's a spark of Moses in us. So some level of an awareness of his view of things, we also have to have, and we do have. But that's not our primary reality. It's a spark in our soul, but it's not our primary reality. So we need to have these ideals of equanimity, of absolute faith, of taking everything the same, of blessing God for bad things with joy. All of these ideals, that's Moses. That's chachma. That's seeing things for the truth. We can all agree that the truth is everything comes from God. Can't come from anywhere else. And therefore, if everything comes from God, God is good. God knows what's good. And so therefore everything is good. In theory, we can agree. On paper, we can sign it. Yes, it's true. It has to be. It makes absolute sense. Let's just be rational for a moment. Just be intellectual. Intellectually, it must be. God is the source of everything. Everything must be good. So if we're in a chachma state, Moses thinking, what's the truth? That's the truth. Whatever happens to me is good. Must be. But you can already hear your bina knocking in the back door and saying, 1 minute. But but the Holocaust, but tragedies, but like all you're saying this is good. It's bad. It's terrible. It's painful. It's hurtful. It's tragic. It's dark. It's that's bina. Chachma is looking at things from truth, from an objective intellectual reality. It must be that way. Yes. But bina is looking at, but I can't feel that. I don't feel it that way. That's not how I'm experiencing my reality. I'm experiencing it from pain and darkness. So there has to be a part of us, the Moses part of us, that knows what the truth is, acknowledges the truth. But there is also the Aaron part of us, the Bina, the emotion that experiences it for how I'm experiencing it now. And therefore, things do upset me and hurt me. I do feel pain. It is sad. But I know that that's my experience of it. That's how I'm going through it. And I have to deal with that and I have to be in that. But there's a part of me that knows that there's a bigger story going on and there's a bigger picture that's beyond what I can experience. And just because I'm feeling it doesn't mean that's the objective truth of the situation. And so I have these two lovers that never part, my chachma and my bina, my intellect that sees things objectively and my emotion that experiences things subjectively. And I'm dancing between the two. And this is the heart of the Torah. This is the center point of the Torah. The whole Torah is about this, is about being able to dance between these two spaces. Never giving in to my subjective experience of reality as being the be all and end all, but knowing that there's a higher truth, but never escaping to that higher truth and pretending that I'm not here and not experiencing this. Because ultimately, the reason why Moses was sent down was to bring the Torah down to us, that we should be able to bring God's light into our life, into the here and now. I can only do that by being a real person. In other words, if I never suffer, if I'm never in pain, if there's nothing ever bad, then I don't have the opportunity to bring God's light into a dark place. Because I'm not in it. I'm not in the dark place. But if I'm a person who feels stuff, who goes through stuff, who has ups and downs, who goes through difficulties, who experiences pain and tragedy, then I'm down in the darkness. But I also have a Moses in me, a part of me that knows that there's a bigger light in this darkness. And there's a greater story that's happening than my little experience of reality. And so I can bring light into that darkness and say, in my darkness, I know God is there. I know God is with me. I know that this is also coming from Him. And my experience of this reality, the painful experience of it, is only a small external layer of a deeper truth. Not an easy place to be. it's much easier to just give full credence to my experience and say, this is just rotten. Or to escape that, anesthetize from that and say, it's all good, everything's fine. It's much easier to try and escape to one extreme or the other. But the real energy of life comes from the tension between the two.
Does Miriam have anything to do with that same process too, or the flow or water?
Not that I know of. I don't know. Don't know. Don't know.
Do you think that tzaddik experiences equanimity of the mind? Real tzaddik.
So this talk was given by the Rabbi, who was a real tzaddik, after the loss of his wife. And so I think, looking at it from our simplistic eyes, this is what he was going through and experiencing. And I think that's a sign of being a human being, like being flesh and blood. A tzaddik is only so amazing because they're a human being. If a tzaddik is an angel, so okay, well, it's not surprising. The fact that a tzaddik is a human being of flesh and blood, living in this here and now, and attains such a level, that's what's amazing about a tzaddik. And so the Rebbe and Moses, for that matter, experienced tragedy, experienced mourning, had emotions, had feelings, was in this world. Even though Moses was primarily the Chachma person, but he had a heart as well, and experienced it for what it is. But the tzaddik is a person who never loses sight of that objective truth that God is in this moment. I'm experiencing the pain and sadness, and God is in that. We fluctuate. We have moments of clarity when we believe it, and we have moments of confusion when we don't believe it, and we have to remind ourselves and go back. We're not tzaddikim. We're not on that level. The tzaddik never loses sight.
So equanimity can be definitely attained by the tzaddik.
Yeah. But what I'm suggesting is that equanimity is not this simplistic thing that it's sometimes presented as. That nothing affects you. If you reach a state where nothing affects you, so then you're not in this world anymore. And what's the point? We were sent in this world to be in this world. We have to be affected by the world around us, because if we're not affected by it, we can't affect it. We interact with the world. We have to be in it. But we have to have a place in us that we can escape to. We can be reminded of that as a place of equanimity. There's a part of me that is not affected by the outside. There's a part of me that is a Moses, that is a tzaddik. There's a part of me that's a tzaddik that is not touched by any external experience, by anything anybody can do or say. I have a value and a worth that is not dependent on somebody else's approval and is not affected by somebody else's insult. That part of me is there and is truth and is connected to God completely and sees things for what they are. And there's a part of me that no matter what difficulty I'm going through is experiencing the godly closeness of that moment. There's a part of me that's that way. But if that's all I was, so then I would be in heaven, I wouldn't be on earth. There's the other part of me that is in the trenches, that is feeling and interacting and being affected by what's around me. But I can't get lost in that because I've got a higher thing pulling me. And this, I believe, is the tension that runs through all of the Kabbalist teachings and the spirituality that they're trying to give us. Very lofty, and very practical. Extremely high ideals and very realistic, down-to-earth teaching. Because it has to be both. We have to live in both. Because the grand scheme that God created was that he wanted his highest light to be revealed in the lowest place. And so we're the ones who have to do that. We have a part of us that is connected to the highest of high, and a part of us that is living in the lowest of the low, in the place of darkness. And the incredible contribution that we give, the thing that we bring to God, is the experience of finiteness, of limitedness, of fallibility, of imperfection. That's what we are. And we bring God into that imperfect place. So what's the practical takeaway from all of this? That when we study the teachings of the Kabbalists, when we read the prayers, when we read King David's Psalms, and when we read on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, all these very lofty prayers that we say, we're talking about this ideal world, a place where our soul wants to be, where everything's clear and everything's right and everything comes from God and everything's good. And our soul has that. Our soul knows that. It's true. That's our chachma. We see it. We know it. It's a true. It's a part of us. And then there's our reality, which seems very far from that, where we doubt it and we're not sure and we're confused and we feel like we're in the dark. And that's also true. That's also real. And so, as real as the reality is that we see in front of us, of a world that is full of challenges and difficulties, that's how real the ideal world should be to us as well. That there's a world of truth where everything is actually good and everything is a part of a divine plan and it's supposed to be and it's meant to be and it's taking us to where we're supposed to go. And therefore, nothing that happens to us personally or nothing that happens in the world is a step back. Nothing is a blockage. Nothing is an obstacle. Everything is an opportunity to reveal more light. Whatever any other person does or says to us, whatever circumstances of life bring to us, there's nothing that's not meant to be, and there's nothing that is getting in the way or pushing us the wrong direction. It's pushing us where we're supposed to be, in the right direction. And so to live that, to be true to our experience where we may be feeling pain and difficulty at this moment, it may be a dark moment, but also to be true to our inner essence, to our Moses that knows that this is God, this is where God is in this moment, not run away from it, face it, in it, and bring the light. And this is ultimately what our mission is. Every time we remind ourselves in a dark moment that God is there, and we bring some light and hope and positivity to it, we conquer another little section of the world for goodness. We turn around another little bit of negativity to positive. We utilize the dark for light. And this accumulates. Accumulatively, every time we do it, it adds a little bit more light until eventually the world will be filled with enough light for evil to be vanquished completely and darkness to be completely overcome. It will have served its purpose. And let's please God when Mashiach comes. May it happen soon. Amen.
Thank you.